how to avoid the digital ID mark if the mark of the beast, or mark if the beast, I think he's asking. I think if I'm not mistaken, Joe Biden announced recently that he passed a bill or some legislation for a social credit score. Did you guys see that?
I didn't see that, but I know they've been pushing it. I worked for a big four company for the last few years, recently into that contract, and they were internally, like, they were really pushing that, the digital bank currency or whatever too. They're really big on that.
Here, let me just see if I can find some more. Joe Biden passes social credit. Okay, news. Let's try that. Tax season, vital. No, that might have been a bullshit announcement. Somebody, see, that's the thing. Like, you can't really tell when you see stuff on social media if it's real or if it's somebody just doctored something, because it's just, there's so much inaccuracy. But to the point that it's coming, which I think it is coming. Like, how do you avoid that? Have you guys put any thought into that?
Yeah.
Bitcoin, cash, silver.
No, there's no way to avoid it entirely. There's just ways of minimizing your presence and learning to live with it. There will
to minimize your footprint.
Unless you want to have a lifestyle that's totally unplugged, totally disconnected from the world, like living in a cabin somewhere in the mountain without electricity in your house, you're not going to be able to avoid it.
But they can still
buy
some type.
I mean, if you buy stuff with their currency, which will be some sort of central bank digital currency, let's be honest, if you buy it with their currency, it's programmable money that's trackable. It's not cash. It's programmable money. They will know what you buy at the grocery store. They will know what you buy at the drugstore. They will know how often you fill up your gas tank and with how much and with what grade of fuel. They'll have a photograph of you doing it as well. So you'd have to think of ways of opting out in that space. And you truthfully, like Drago said, I don't think you truthfully completely can. I think you're probably going to have some ability to be somewhat anon in that, scenario, whether or not you've got the option to use cash or other.
But they can Ruby Ridge you at any point.
What
like we saw that in the 90s. Oh, it was like that Randy Weaver story, Northern Idaho, where I think it was something like an undercover FBI agent or something tried to purchase or gave him like a ridiculous amount of cash to like saw off a shotgun. He's like, okay, yeah, I'll use some cash, sawed off the shotgun. Then they sent the feds in, killed his son, killed his wife. And then eventually they were able to get him out. And I think he was acquitted of all charges, but, and then they did the whole narrative like, oh, he was like a white nationalist or something. Like, no, he was like a former Green Beret who just wanted to live in the cabin. It was the anniversary of Waco not too long ago, so I grew up down the road from there. So I remember that when I was a kid. We left Texas when I was like 8 years old, and I grew up in Washington State. But I remember that. So when the documentary comes up, they always mention like the Ruby Ridge thing. And after that, I'm a nerd. I'm like, well, let me watch the interview of like the daughter and stuff. This poor girl is probably like 8, 9, 10 years old, and traumatized her all because, and it was a sting operation, but they kind of set him up too. Like we'll see a lot more of that. Like, yo, you didn't ride a bike to work, or your car doesn't get enough fuel economy, and then send the feds, armed to the teeth to take care of you.
Yeah. So, I mean, look, the scenario that I've painted before, I'll just restate it. This is a very real thing that's going to happen for us. And I'm going to say probably within the next decade would be entirely reasonable. You're going to go to the grocery store, and because they've been tracking your purchases and they're concerned about the climate, you've bought too much red meat. You're at the checkout counter and you want to buy your steaks, and the cashier says, sorry, sir, you've exceeded your limit for red meat this month. Here's a bag of crickets or bugs instead for a new source of protein. And then you might want to get into your car and drive somewhere, but because it's an electric car and it's connected to the government, like I was talking about this in a video months ago, the government is instituting, and they did this very quietly. They didn't make a big public announcement. Nobody really talked about it, but they've instituted that new vehicles within a certain time frame need to be programmable and controlled by the government. So if they want to shut it down, and the argument that they're using is we don't want to endanger the public and have another O.J. Simpson scenario where we have a highway where you can't stop the vehicle and you've got police cruisers chasing this guy. We just want to be able to be like, oh, he's in this vehicle with his license plate, turn it off, and then it stops driving. right?
I bought a
But
car in Texas one time where the dealership disabled that. They're going through the list of options like, oh, OnStar, yeah, obviously they don't want the government tracking
they'll
you.
be
And
the
they just,
black market
yeah,
to sort of hack
yeah.
that. But at the end of the day, you're going to end up in a scenario where if you've driven too much and you get in your electric car and you want to go and drive somewhere, it won't work. And you'll get like a notice on the screen that says, you've exceeded your carbon credits. Please make or please accept this penalty payment or this tax payment of whatever through your CBDC account immediately to the government to drive your vehicle. This is where we're going to go. So if you want to opt out of that, you need to have a gas powered car or be able to hack into the car to sort of, you know, disable things like that, get energy from solar or wind, you know, for example, off their grid and produce it yourself. Like you need to get off their system and create your own system, but there's not going to be a way to completely stay off it. I mean, if you're going to be living in society plugged into road systems, schools, culture, government, public services like fire, policing, and all that stuff, you're part of the system. You're a cog in the wheel. There's no question about it.
I'm assuming there'll be
And they don't
something
need
where
to track you.
I'm assuming there'll be something where like high net income people or earners will be able to buy credits or trade credits. For example, like I spend less than 30 days a year in the US for tax purposes. So like I'd have a surplus of carbon credits, tax credits, animal source protein credits. Like could someone like me potentially or hypothetically in the future sell those to someone that it's like, hey, you know what? I'm a billionaire in San Francisco. I don't really care about this. Hey, Jaron, you're never here. You know, I'll buy your credits. Because I think they used to do that at the industrial level with carbon credits back in the day, didn't they?
Well, you know, you're going to see these social credits things happening, man. And, you know, the final version, we don't know exactly what it's going to look like, but I bet you can come back to this video in 10 years and be like, shit, Rich was pretty much right. I really hope you guys enjoyed that clip. If you want to watch the full length podcast, you can find that over here, that clip's from. If you're newer to the channel, make sure you hit subscribe over here and pin down below in the top comment. You'll find a bunch of useful links to my website, my supplement line books, and a bunch of other stuff. Have an amazing day. Peace out.